It started as a closed-door meeting in Geneva, far from the roar of Washington or the restless streets of Ouagadougou. The world had been watching the young and defiant Captain Ibrahim Traoré with increasing unease. At just 35, he had seized control of Burkina Faso in what international analysts first called a military hiccup, but it had turned into a full-blown anti-Western revolution. The man had audacity, yes. But no one expected what he was about to do. Donald J. Trump had been re-elected in a stunning comeback that rocked the global establishment. Determined to reassert American dominance in African affairs, his administration moved quickly to reclaim lost ground. A last-minute diplomatic maneuver was initiated, a high-stakes meeting with Traoré, where the former president intended to remind the young leader of one thing: we helped you. What followed, however, was nothing short of global political detonation. The Geneva Convention Center was unusually tense. Trump arrived flanked by former generals, conservative media moguls, and a few skeptical CIA advisors. His red tie hung stiffly like a flag of war. Traoré, on the other hand, entered with only 3 advisors, 2 former rebels and 1 cyber intelligence analyst who had worked with Russian and Iranian think tanks. The handshake was brief. Trump's grip was tight. Traoré's fingers remained relaxed, his eyes scanning the room like a soldier looking for snipers. Captain Traoré, Trump began, settling into the leather chair with a huff. Or should I say president now? Congratulations on surviving. Traoré didn't blink. Thank you, Mr. Trump, but I do more than survive, I shape history. A muffled chuckle came from Trump's side of the table, likely from Colonel Rich Bronson, the mustachioed veteran of Iraq, who had seen too many coups to take this one seriously. Trump raised a finger. That's exactly why we're here. You see, while the world thinks you're a self-made revolutionary, we both know there's more to the story. The satellite feeds, the arms shipments, the IMF silence, the diplomatic shadows. We let it happen. You know that. I know that. I do not deny you helped remove some barriers, Traoré replied calmly, but those were not favors. They were bribes wrapped in strategies. Semantics. Trump waved. The point is, we let you breathe, and now you breathe fire against us. Traoré leaned forward. Is that a problem, Mr. Trump? A chill entered the room. Trump's advisors shifted uncomfortably. Traoré's cyber advisor, a woman named Samara Zongo, pulled up a tablet and placed it in front of the Americans. With one tap, classified U.S. memos appeared, exposing CIA attempts to infiltrate Traoré's digital communications weeks after he took office. Trump's lips curled. So you've been spying on us too? No, Samara said with a smirk. We've just been reading the messages you send to each other. Trump slammed the table. Let's cut the crap, Traoré. We made you what you are. We could unmake you in 72 hours. Then try. Traoré whispered, voice low but lethal. But first, ask France how that worked out. Trump's eyes narrowed. You expelled them. Big move, but without U.S. funding, your economy's a corpse in waiting. At this, Traoré stood. A corpse does not fear bullets, Mr. Trump. Burkina Faso was dead long before I came. Now it lives in defiance, and that scares you. Outside, the Swiss guards exchanged glances. Inside, something ancient was reborn. An open defiance, a refusal to kneel. Trump stood too, nearly chest to chest with Traoré now. Do you really think you can stand against the West, alone? Trump spat the words like acid. I am not alone. Traoré said calmly, look east, look south. There are nations tired of being chess pieces. At that moment, Samira tapped her tablet again. This time, a live feed from Ouagadougou played. A sea of millions marched under a red, black flag bearing the symbol of a broken chain. They chanted in French, Arabic, and native Mossi dialects. El Afrique en est a vendre, Traoré ou la mort. Africa is not for sale, Traoré or death. Trump looked shaken. We have assets in your country. Oil, cobalt, lithium. We won't walk away from that. You won't have to. Traoré replied, we'll burn it before you take it. The threat was nuclear in nature, not of bombs, but of ideology. Traoré wasn't threatening war. He was threatening to inspire the world. Trump turned to his advisors. Let's take a break. But Traoré wasn't done. One more thing, Mr. Trump, he said, his voice suddenly softer. You said you helped us, that you made us. But we've seen what American help brings. Destroyed economies, assassinated leaders, debt traps. If that is help, then maybe your enemies were right all along. And then it came. The sentence that would echo across the UN, NATO, and the African Union like a thunderclap. We do not need your help, we need your absence. The room fell silent. Trump didn't respond. For the first time, he simply walked away. No bravado, no media grin, just silence. His team scrambled behind him. The camera feed from Samira's tablet suddenly flashed the face of a Chinese diplomat, smiling, then an Iranian general, then a Brazilian economist. All logged into the same encrypted network. Watching, listening, waiting, Traoré turned to his advisors. It begins now. The fallout from Geneva was immediate and seismic. Within 48 hours of Traoré's chilling line, "We do not need your help, we need your absence," media houses scrambled to decode its implications. CNN called it the beginning of Africa's second decolonization. Fox News labeled it a betrayal of the West. But in Ouagadougou, it was something else entirely, a call to arms. The streets swelled with energy not seen since independence, and somewhere in the shadowy corridors of Washington, a counterstrike was already underway. Trump was back at Mar-a-Lago, pacing with barely concealed rage. He wasn't used to being embarrassed, especially not by a 30-something military captain from a country most Americans couldn't spell. His advisors were trying to downplay it. "Let it go," Bronson had said. "It's Burkina Faso, not Beijing." But Trump wasn't thinking small. His pride had been wounded on camera in front of the world, and Traoré had become an icon overnight. Hashtags like #Traoré Rising, #Africa Unchained, and #The Burkinabe Lion were trending on TikTok and Instagram. Black youth from D.C. to Dakar were stitching his speech into remixes, protest chants, and artwork. The image of Trump walking away speechless became a meme, but the humiliation wasn't just online. "He made me look weak," Trump muttered, fists clenched, like "I don't know how to deal with dirt, world tyrants." A new voice entered the conversation, a figure who hadn't spoken much in Geneva. Former NSA Deputy Claire Redford leaned forward. "Sir, I don't think he's just trying to embarrass you," she said. "I think he's trying to ignite a movement." Trump stopped pacing. "Then let's snuff it out." "How?" asked Bronson. "Coup, sanctions, assassination." "No," Trump said slowly. "Something bigger. We choke him until he begs for help." Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré sat alone in the underground command chamber built beneath the presidential palace, a bunker constructed during the Cold War, now repurposed for cyber warfare and counterintelligence. The walls buzzed with low-frequency servers, encrypted communications, and analysts monitoring Western media, drones, and satellites. Samira Zongo entered, urgency in her step. "They've begun," she said, handing him a sealed folder. Inside were aerial photos of the Ivorian border, long convoys of U.S. private military contractors, unmarked but obvious. Over 100 trucks carrying humanitarian aid had crossed into Ivory Coast the previous night. "Mercenaries?" Traoré asked. "Likely," Samira replied. "PMC contracts from Black Paladin and Arm Forge, both ex-American special ops fronts. They plan to stage a proxy war and to blame it on your people." Traoré stood slowly. "Then we must move first. Let's expose the chessboard." That night at exactly 9:00 p.m. GMT, every major news channel in the global south was interrupted by a special transmission from Burkina Faso. The camera panned to Traoré in his olive military jacket, beret in hand, flanked not by soldiers, but school teachers, nurses, farmers, and trade union leaders. It was a quiet yet thunderous signal. This was no longer just a military regime. It was a movement. "My fellow citizens of Africa," he began, "the drums of deception beat once more. The former president of the United States now seeks to punish us, not for crimes but for courage. They call it help. We call it control. They call it aid. We call it dependency." The camera cut to drone footage of the American convoys along the Ivorian border. "This is not aid," Traoré said. "This is invasion disguised as generosity." The footage spread like wildfire. Within hours, protests broke out in Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal. People held signs with Trump's quote, "We helped you," crossed out and replaced with "We never asked." But while the people marched, the elite panicked. In a quiet boardroom in Manhattan, executives from 3 rare earth mining firms scrambled to contain the damage. With Traoré's speech now global, their stock prices plummeted. Traoré controlled cobalt reserves vital to smartphone and EV production. China watched closely. Russia sent quiet congratulations. The BRICS nations issued a vague but supportive statement about sovereignty in African governance. Back at Mar-a-Lago, Trump exploded. "You want to see ungrateful? We'll show him ungrateful." He dialed a number from a burner phone, one he hadn't used since the Venezuela operation in 2019. "Activate Protocol Mirage," he whispered. Time to make the world doubt this little hero. Within 72 hours, a series of forged leaks flooded the internet. Fabricated documents showing alleged Russian funding of Traoré's regime, claims of secret arms deals with Iran, even a photoshopped video of Traoré laughing with Wagner Group commanders. U.S. media ran with it instantly. CNN Chiron blared, Burkina Faso, Africa's new rogue state. Fox News took it further. Traoré, the Black Putin. The goal was clear: discredit Traoré before he became unstoppable. But what Trump hadn't anticipated was that Traoré had his own contingency. Samira Zongo initiated Project Nimba, a cyber counter-intelligence operation that released real-time counterproof, timestamps, GPS logs, and deepfake detection evidence. They exposed the forgeries within 48 hours, turning the narrative against the Western media. One Nigerian journalist tweeted, "If they lied about this, what else have they lied about?" But the real explosion came days later during an emergency UN summit. Trump, invited to speak as special advisor, addressed the room with swagger. Burkina Faso is being led by a puppet, a tyrant propped by rogue nations. He's a threat to democracy and to free markets. The camera panned. Traoré was present. He rose, and then, without warning, he walked straight to the podium. "I did not come to listen to lectures," he said, voice slicing the silence. "I came to bring receipts." With that, he held up a flash drive. "This contains declassified documents from American contractors offering me weapons in exchange for mining rights. Names, signatures, dollar amounts." Gasps filled the hall, but I refused, not because I hate America, but because I love freedom more than comfort. Trump's face twisted. "This is propaganda, but Traoré wasn't finished. I have no Russian base, no Chinese drones, I have only my people. If that threatens your empire, then maybe it is your empire that is the problem." He paused. Then he said the line that would send shockwaves through every Western capital. "I would rather live in poverty on African soil than in luxury under foreign chains." Silence, then scattered applause. Then thunder, even some European diplomats clapped. Trump left the hall mid-speech, face pale, security scrambling behind. Outside, protesters held new signs. "We helped you." "Trump, we freed ourselves." Traoré. The American exodus from the UN sum, it was not just physical, it was symbolic. For the first time in decades, a world leader had stood at the global pulpit and dismantled the Western narrative in real time. Traoré's speech went viral across platforms. Even traditionally conservative voices in the West found it difficult to discredit a man who held proof, who refused power in exchange for sovereignty. But Trump wasn't finished. "All right," he muttered to Bronson and Redford aboard Air Force One. "We tried diplomacy, we tried media, we even tried discrediting him, but he keeps getting stronger. This isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. This is about the rest of Africa watching him and thinking they can do the same." Bronson spoke cautiously. "Then we go kinetic." Trump didn't answer immediately. He stared at the screen in front of him, displaying real-time intelligence gathered by satellites, drones, and global cyber units. One dot blinked aggressively. Burkina Faso's southeastern province of Kampienga. It wasn't a coincidence. He turned. "How fast can we destabilize Kampienga?" Redford frowned. "There's a refugee corridor there. Nigeria just built a border fence. It's a powder keg if you light it. It could spill across 5 countries. "Exactly," Trump whispered. "Make them beg for control again." Within a week, coordinated attacks erupted across the southeastern border. First, it was Fulani insurgents, armed and unusually well coordinated. Then rogue elements from Côte d'Ivoire crossed in, planting mines and targeting energy infrastructure. At the same time, cyber attacks crippled communication systems in the capital. By the time Traoré's intelligence unit traced the origin of the funds, it was too late. Shell corporations based in the Cayman Islands, routed through Serbia, fronted by former CIA operatives. The fingerprints were clean, but the pattern was obvious. Washington wanted chaos, yet Traoré didn't crumble. He summoned the High Council in Ouagadougou, military strategists, tribal elders, women leaders, and a handful of Pan-African intellectuals. For 6 hours they debated, argued, yelled, until finally a strategy emerged not from weapons but from culture. Story, said Malik Doumbia, a griot, turned political theorist. We fight story with story. If the West spreads terror through illusion, we must spread resistance through truth. Traoré nodded slowly. Then we take the war to their living rooms. Within days, a docuseries titled The Chains They Gave Us dropped on YouTube, Instagram, and even TikTok, slated into French, Swahili, Arabic, and English. It showed grainy but verified footage of the first IMF deals post-independence, old videos of European leaders referring to African nations as infant states, and modern-day contracts that stripped Africa of rare earths in exchange for expired vaccines and outdated military hardware. Each episode ended with Traoré's voice. We did not fight for new masters. We fought for no masters. The global impact was immediate. Students in South Africa staged protests outside U.S. embassies. Riots broke out in Mali and Chad against American mining outposts. In Paris, a group of African diaspora youth took over the steps of the Eiffel Tower with signs saying, "Africa is not yours to fix." Trump fumed as Western influence in West Africa disintegrated like wet paper. What now? Bronson barked, watching the latest intelligence report. We isolate him. Trump snapped, cut every deal he could make. No aid, no oil, no banking. But what none of them anticipated was Traoré's next move. He turned east. China and Russia had been circling for months, offering quiet deals. But Traoré played a different card. He proposed a Pan-African crypto reserve, backed not by yuan or rubles, but by African gold and lithium. The currency would be digital, decentralized, and beyond Western reach. The announcement shook the World Bank. The IMF issued a statement calling it economic suicide. Western analysts scoffed, but then Kenya signed on. Then Ghana, then Namibia reluctantly, followed by Tanzania, and finally Nigeria. The moment Nigeria joined, everything changed. Global markets trembled. Western holdings in Africa faced risk downgrades. Elon Musk tweeted, "If Africa goes crypto, battery production's gonna collapse in 12 months." The West retaliated with fury. Sanctions were slapped on Burkina Faso. Swift access was throttled. American tech firms began pulling out. Aid agencies were reevaluated, but Traoré had expected it all. In a defiant address on Burkinabe state media, he declared, "They think they are punishing us, but all they have done is reveal how afraid they are of an Africa that thinks for itself." At the same time, another fire burned in Washington. The U.S. Congress called for hearings. "Why is a captain from Burkina Faso dictating our African strategy?" asked Senator Torres. Trump, furious at the unraveling, decided to go for the final blow. Operation Goliath, a covert plan, eliminate Traoré and replace him with a reformist council, backed by a coalition of mercenaries, foreign-trained African elites and Western advisors. A team was assembled, led by Colonel Dwayne Mercer, a former Delta Force operator turned Black Ops tactician. He was known for two things: precision and results. The plan, insertion through Togo, then infiltration through the Eastern Corridor, disguised as anti-terror operations. The target, presidential compound in Ouagadougou. What Mercer didn't know, or had already been tipped off, not by human spies, but AI surveillance built in cooperation with a group of young Nigerian and Kenyan coders. At 02:00 hours, the compound went dark. No sirens, no lights, just silence. Mercer's team breached what they believed was the war room, but it was empty. On the screen was a message: "History doesn't forget traitors, and neither does Africa." and then explosions. Not killing, but trapping. The floor sealed, smoke grenades dropped, and a hidden broadcast began streaming live to the world. The mercenaries, masked, stunned, and exposed, were shown live on Pan-African television. Their weapons, their faces, their accents. Traoré appeared remotely from an undisclosed location. "You came for a king," he said, voice cold, "but you forgot. We are all kings now." The next day, 17 countries severed military ties with the United States. France recalled its ambassador to Burkina Faso. Russia invited Traoré for a summit, and in a final, brutal twist, Mexico issued an open statement condemning the U.S. for its neo-imperialist approach to African sovereignty. Trump was done. He knew it, his plan had failed, and yet, in his suite he smiled bitterly. "Get me Zai," he muttered to Redford. Redford's eyes widened. "You want to talk to China now?" Trump lit a cigar. "No, I want to make Traoré their problem." The world had changed. Quietly, radically, irreversibly, Traoré had not only survived, it was now clear to everyone that he had won. The attempted coup wasn't just foiled, it was dissected in real time before a global audience. Burkina Faso had become ground zero for a new world order, and the man who once seemed like a military upstart was now being hailed across continents as the African phoenix. Xi Jinping watched from Beijing with cool calculation as Burkina Faso's digital currency gained traction. It wasn't just about Africa anymore. Africa was writing the rules now. The East had been watching, waiting for the West to overreach and collapse under its own contradictions. Traoré had accelerated that collapse by a decade. A call came through. "Donald Trump is on the line," said Xi's translator. Xi motioned to accept. Trump appeared on the screen, drained but composed, face shadowed by the dim light of the secure communication line aboard his private compound in Florida. "I assume you saw the broadcast," Trump began dryly. "I saw," Xi said flatly. "Good," Trump said, "because this guy's a problem for both of us." Xi didn't flinch. "You made him one." Trump smirked bitterly. "We both know what he's doing. He's turning Africa into a fortress. No loans, no military bases, no backdoor trade deals. And now with that digital reserve coin, he's threatening your lithium deals as much as mine." Xi's eyes narrowed. "So you're proposing an alliance, temporary alignment?" Trump clarified. "We contain him, not destroy him, collapse the coin, sever the crypto, choke his allies. Nigeria is his backbone. We hit Nigeria's banks first." There was a pause. Then Xi said, "What you ask has a price. Everything does," Trump replied, and so began the quietest and most dangerous partnership of modern geopolitics. Over the next 6 weeks, banks across Lagos reported irregularities. Multiple trading platforms were hit with DDoS attacks. Online transactions failed silently. The Nigerian central bank blamed malicious foreign actors, but couldn't name names. Meanwhile, global headlines shifted. Suddenly, African crypto was unstable. Speculators began dumping reserves. But Traoré had anticipated it. In a sealed, encrypted video shared only with the leaders of his new African alliance, he spoke, "They will burn our houses if we build with their bricks, so let us build with our soil." His solution. He unveiled Coronet, an offline, satellite-linked transaction system that allowed rural communities to trade in digital coin without internet dependency. It bypassed traditional ISP, used encrypted frequencies via East African satellite relays, and couldn't be tracked or shut down. Farmers in Mali used it to trade grain. Miners in the DRC exchanged cobalt contracts. Traders in Niger accepted it at border crossings. Coronet went viral, and it couldn't be hacked. It was Africa's blockchain, not Western, not Chinese, not Russian. Trump exploded. "This is beyond dangerous," he yelled at Bronson. "We're not talking about a country now. We're talking about a F******ing continent that's cut us out." Bronson didn't answer. Redford entered the room silently and handed Trump a folder. "What's this?" "The one thing we didn't want to do," Redford muttered, "but it's the last option." Inside the folder was Project Scythe. a biotechnological pressure point, a virus genetically engineered decades ago during the Cold War, designed to suppress fertility among specific genomic markers. Originally shelved as unethical and unstable, never tested, but now, resurrected by desperation, Trump looked at it and whispered, "This will kill children." Redford answered coldly, "Not kill, just end future ones." Trump stared at the folder for a long time. He placed it on the table. "No," he said. Bronson and Redford looked up, stunned. "No." Bronson repeated, "I'm not remembered as the man who nuked Africa's soul." Trump said, "Let them build, let them rise. I'll deal with the fallout politically, but this crosses the line." He stood, shoulders heavy. "I created Traoré," he said to himself. "He rose because of me." Then he turned to Redford. "Make the call to the UN, full recognition of Coronet. Start working with the African Union on shared tech. We offer partnership, not dominance. We survive through relevance, not force." Redford stared in disbelief. "You're surrendering?" Trump walked past him, expression unreadable. "No," he said, with the last embers of an empire burning behind his eyes. "I'm adapting." At the same time, in Ouagadougou, Traoré stepped onto a rooftop as the sun began to rise. Around him, the city was waking, not to war, but to the promise of sovereignty. Children sang in the streets. Traders argued in Douala. Solar panels gleamed. He looked into the distance, then turned to his aide. "Do you think they'll try again?" the aide asked. Traoré smiled. "They always do," he replied, "but next time we won't respond, we'll lead." And he walked away, alone, unguarded, unbent, into the breaking dawn of a continent reborn.